Hey there, you beautiful beings of light, my home fries, you spiritual gangsters. V here. Today I'm going to show you, yes, how to convert atheists. What?
And how do you plan to do that? Hacky sack and granola? Alright, Moonbeam, let's do this. Greetings, fellow space travelers, BionicDance here. Okay, I admit, that intro was a little mean, but like I keep telling folks, I was raised by hippies. I know this guy, his type. I've been around them all my life, and I've seen how they treat spirituality. Let's put it this way, I could go the rest of my life and die happy, never again smelling the scent of incense. Just saying. None of them ever tried to convert me to anything, though.
And if you're an atheist viewing this video, you're in for a treat, buddy, because, like, I'm about to throw down and not come at you with fallacies.
Actually, a lot of this guy's arguments are not exactly badly thought out, are presented in a fairly rational, if seemingly stoned, manner. But I've often said that you can prove absolutely anything, provided you never have to show evidence for it. Argument alone is not enough.
So today we're going to go through 6 major key points in showing you how to convert an atheist into viewing God, into having understanding that there is God. Now, I am not going to guarantee that they're going to fall into your religion. That is not what I'm teaching. Because, to be honest, the most religions have been corrupted by the patriarch for a long time. Almost all of our holy books have been infiltrated for the likes of men.
Or, you know, written by them entirely without a scrap of divine influence. I actually had a difficult time figuring out exactly what religion this guy follows. He only says it once, but he seems to be a Christian, except he also seems to be a pantheist. Or something. I don't know. I know I've often said that I only go after religion in self-defense, and this guy seems fairly harmless. Some of you are going to tell me that he's low-hanging fruit, are probably typing it in the comments section right now. But he is trying to convert us. That's the point of his video. So he's made himself a target.
Alright, so number 1, language. Language is not properly understood, or at least not heavily weighed in the average person's eyes. So, the purpose of language is to express our emotions. It's supposed to tell what's going on in here. That's communication, raw communication. And it developed for survival reasons, right? You say, hey, you know, there's a cat, there's a saber-toothed tiger over there.
Language developed for communication, to be able to do more than just grunt and play the beta version of charades. What you're communicating, the topic you have in mind, is certainly a factor, but I'm pretty sure that the initial impetus was not the touchy-feelies.
So, at first, language was very direct. It was very, boom, I say this, there's like no other weird interpretation. However, over the advancement of humanity, we've complicated the language. And now language can be weaponized. And it can be perverted and just misunderstood in general. And so you have all these ridiculous disputes.
Oh, I've been there. Like when someone insists on using a certain definition of a word, which cuts off the ability to describe something else in the same category, or changes the paradigm completely, making certain points impossible to express with the current lexicon. And they do that despite the fact that their concept can still be expressed using different terms, allowing the word they're insisting on to be used to express those other ideas. It's like attempting to cheat in a debate. And when they realize they aren't winning their point, despite their unwillingness to compromise, they'll try to play the victim card, that they're being labeled rather than described. Nothing has changed about how their position is perceived. They just see that they've lost their linguistic advantage and are scrambling to grab it back however they can.
So you have to understand that language is for connecting your bridges of understanding in your own perspective into one, so that you can create a platform of middle understanding and then build up a higher relationship that way. So that's why I'm emphasizing understanding language a bit better.
And here's a prime example. I wouldn't have put what he just said in those terms, but I understand what he's trying to say and even agree with it. So already he and I have some common ground. But don't worry, this is gonna go off the rails soon enough.
Alright, number 2, nerve of ego. So, nerve of ego, it stands for neediness, entitlement, righteousness, and victimhood. Actually, we don't need this yet. Specifically, we're going to talk about the righteousness, because I see this all the time in awakening communities and with, like, frickin' people who are just, like, spewing nonsense of their religion, that ours is the truth, and it's like, oh my god, you gotta calm down with your circular reasoning there, buddy, or like you're just ugh. So specifically righteousness.
Okay, but your video is specifically titled How to Convert an Atheist to God, which kind of implies that you think yours is the truth. Seems a little hypocritical there, Sunflower. Or possibly clueless. The jury's still out.
When you understand that you hold a higher love, truth, potential, and you actually might be falsely holding that, and then it's really bad. But even if you know that you've basically are closer to less suffering, you've come to understand more deeper lessons, and you realize, like, you look at other people and you understand, or like when you interact with them, that they have a lot of spiritual progression that they need to go through and like to awaken.
This assumes that awaken is even a thing. I mean, if we're talking about a secular awakening, breaking people out of an isolating thought bubble, a lens through which they view the world, okay, sure. We've all known people like that. So where does converting to God come into this equation?
That's perfectly fine and all, but you cannot be the demon who only has one nostril.
What?
And what that means is that when you are forcing your opinions onto others, you're using your ego to like try and control people. That shit's not gonna work.
Okay, granted, but I don't grok the imagery.
Atheists don't want to hear how frickin', right you are or loving you are. It like that doesn't matter. They need, just like myself, rationality. Look, I was an atheist for 3 years.
In a row?
17 to 20, I frickin' hated almost all religion. I still love Christ, but like, I did not like religion.
Like I said, he makes this one allusion to Christianity, but he seems to have rejected the church. Not entirely certain what that makes him, especially since some of his later statements make allusions to pantheism. If you put me in a good cop, bad cop, or waterboarding situation, I still couldn't honestly tell you what religious demographic this guy occupies.
Language is limited, so it's finding higher truth. Everybody's always looking for higher truth. That's how it should be working.
This assumes that there is such a thing as a higher truth. What is that? A lot of people are searching for better understanding, which could be described as such. But what makes it higher? That's such a strange term when you really think about it. In fact, truth is a strange word when not talking about the difference between it and lies. Within this particular context, I'm looking for more accurate facts, not something as nebulous as truth.
Okay, 3, bait. I've kind of roughly gone over this already. But you need to entice the other person. You need to dare this atheist that you're talking to. Say, look, I dare you to listen and have a rational discussion with me to the best of our abilities so we can come to a higher understanding.
This sounds great on paper. The problem is that most atheists with whom you're likely to have this conversation will probably have deconverted from one religion or another already. They'll have heard these arguments. They'll have had this discussion many times. They've been over it rationally, repeatedly. Don't get me wrong, not getting people's hackles up right away is a great idea, but unless you're targeting someone who hasn't really made up their mind, you're bashing your head against the wall here. What you need to do is present facts. Evidence. You need to give people something new to think over. Believers haven't had a new argument in a long, long time.
Number 4, no fallacies. If you're using fallacies, I'm ugh! Don't use fallacies. Oh God! I get so ticked off when people use fallacies non-stop.
Ease up there, Bruce. I don't like fallacies either, but it won't help to hulk out over it. Calm your rage. Truth is, if someone uses a fallacy, they've often handed you the victory, because it means their argument is flawed and thus debunkable. It doesn't necessarily make your own position correct, but at least you don't have to concede to them until they've rethought their position.
Number 5. Science, occult, and biopsychology stuff. Look, when I was an atheist, if somebody would have told me that there was deeper science at play, that the whole spirituality stuff wasn't just magic and based off of mythology, because that's what I thought it was, because there was nobody talking to me about any of this stuff anytime I grew up. You have to realize, so our science here is basically, it's roughly like 500 years old, modern science.
How is he defining modern science? Because according to this, rather less time than that, which actually helps his argument, at least technically. He's been feeding bats laxatives for how crazy this is going to get.
That is... that's like half of a step into the great vastness of technology that's already been before us, and that's already out in the galaxy. Even here on this planet, if you go back to Atlantean times, the technology there, freaking, they already had anti-gravity technology and cool stuff like that.
And that, my friends, is what the deep end looks like. Told you this was gonna get loopy. Look, don't get me wrong. I love the idea of Atlantis. My very first IMDb credit is from working on a video game based on Disney's Atlantis: The Lost Empire. Terrible game. I'm glad all I did was cutscene scripting. I think it'd be awesome if Area 51 and Roswell was a real thing, alien abductions and all that. But if you ask me point blank, I'll tell you I'm pretty damn sure they're just urban legends. This guy? He's talking about Atlantis like he knows it's real, and he's trying to convert atheists by saying that religion is higher science, or something.
The argument that would have worked for me when I was an atheist was that through biopsychology, so through engineering your understanding of reality to know thyself, as above, so below, knowing hermetic principles, stuff like that, it opens up like your ability to use rationality instead of empirical data.
I think you'll find that most atheists these days, at least the ones who've given it more thought than God, whatever, are going to insist on empirical data. I can use my mind to come up with all kinds of things, rational or irrational. Doesn't make them more real than any other sort of brain music. Give me something I can test, and then have someone else test it to make sure I'm not full of crap. He says this argument would have worked on him. I'd like to see him try out this concept on most of today's more self-aware atheists. See how far it gets him.
But like for the biopsychology part, when you upgrade that your capacities up here, it actually allows your consciousness to run more efficiently and more properly aligned against illusion. And illusion is what causes dukkha, what causes suffering.
I'm fairly certain that suffering has causes completely unrelated to illusion. Getting thwacked on the head with a baseball bat, for example, or getting dumped by the love of your life. Pretty sure seeing pink elephants after smoking one hell of a doobie, I'm just guessing, isn't going to be the culprit.
You upgrade your consciousness, it basically wires you to be able to perceive more properly of what actually exists, which there is beyond the 5 senses. Your 6th sense is actually thinking.
Thinking isn't a sense, it's a process. It's what your head meat does. Figuring shit out, interpreting the data from your actual senses.
In science, you easily Google this. We are only able to perceive, so we're able to only look at a certain spectrum of light.
That's why we invented machines to detect them. No God required. When someone invents a machine to detect magical beings like gods, please let me know.
As you ascend your consciousness, it allows you to expand the capacities of your biology to learn in new ways, not necessarily by sight itself. I mean, to some degree, yes, but not just by purely sight, but able to detect other frequencies more with your body. And so what that does is it allows you to understand all the spirits and stuff like that so many religions discuss and talk about.
So we have to ascend our consciousness to be able to detect the vibrations of spirits. And this is the knockdown argument to bring atheists to believe in a god. Whatever you say there, Tie-Dye.
Now, to what degree we're not going to go into that would take way too long.
Yes, it would. Fair warning, I've actually cut out some of the goofier shit just because it's either repetition of what's been said before, it isn't relevant, or it's got really, really long pauses between bits of dialogue. As usual, for the sake of integrity, link in the video description if you want to see the whole thing.
Occult stuff. Again, if you don't understand, occult is not evil, it's not darkness. There are what's known as black wizards. And there's actually a lot of New Agers who aren't understanding their occult purposes, and so they're on the left-handed path of liberation, which can cause lots of evil if not properly balanced. Anyways,
who wants to hear more about these black wizards? Hey, remember when this video was supposed to be about converting atheists?
What it does is it allows atheists to view the other planes of existence in a more scientific manner, and for them that makes it more concrete. It made it more concrete for me.
No. He goes on for a bit about the holographic universe, quantum mechanics, all of that, without ever really going into any kind of detail, mind you. But we're still in no God required territory.
And you find any frickin' ridiculous stuff with me, point it out.
Way ahead of you there, Chief.
I cannot be mad at somebody who teaches me further truth. Will not happen.
Good to know.
6. Options of theology. The main reason why there are atheists today, a huge, heavy one, is 1, our religions are super corrupted.
If by corrupted he means that they make bullshit claims, then yeah. If he just means that they're the bad guys, well, I know that wouldn't change my beliefs if it could be shown that God is real. I'm not saying my affiliation would change. If I had a magic ring or flaming sword that could kill the God of the Bible, I wouldn't hesitate. Dude's an asshole. But at least I'd believe, right?
2, you are presenting them with only theist, Theist, theist perspective of God.
I'm glad he was here to spell that for us.
So, when you present a theist perspective, you're basically telling atheists you need to fear God and fear this being that's more powerful than you. Otherwise, you're going to hell, and that's absurd. So it's this overlord type view. People do not want to be oppressed. They want liberation. It's in their DNA.
Like I said, if given the means, I'd kill the God of the Bible. But that's not why I don't believe. I don't believe because the necessary facts aren't there. The data required to show that a God, any God, is real is not within our grasp. There are gods humanity has come up with that are genuinely kind and caring, and I don't believe in those either. And for the same reasons. So while it's true that the best way to convert people probably doesn't involve trying to get them to believe in Sky Hitler, that's really not the crux of the issue here.
And because there's always going to be differences, people are always going to be debating what is right knowledge. But right action is much more easily definable by ethicists such as myself.
And where does this judgment of right action come from, if not from right knowledge? Unless you're willing to say that it's subjective opinion, you still got all your work ahead of you recruiting atheists to your side.
And this is where I started. I started into my transition of understanding what God is through scientific pantheism. This was the first one that opened my eyes.
Told you you'd get to pantheism at some point. But scientific pantheism? Sounds like a contradiction in terms, doesn't it? Of course, it's also known as naturalistic pantheism, not that it makes a huge difference. And the truth is that scientific pantheism is the very epitome of no God required. At its most basic, it says that a God is the universe. All of the natural world, seen as a whole, is God. How is that any different, really, than not saying the universe is God? The end result is exactly the same.
Now this again, this might not be your view, but this is much easier of a perception of something to convince an atheist of God's existence.
Making God simpler isn't going to convince an atheist. We're not stupid. We don't need the Cliff's Notes version of your God or anybody else's. The problem isn't with us. Hell, it might not even be with your God if such a creature exists. It's his spokespeople who failed, and it's happened specifically because they expect what convinced themselves to be convincing to everybody else.
And once you start understanding that time doesn't exist, and that everything has always been, it's just in different states, because of the law of rhythm, that the Big Bang is another note in the long orchestra of infinity.
Thing is, Rainbow, time is an observable, measurable phenomenon. And if everything exists in different states perpetually, those states are clearly on a timeline on which now is moving in a certain direction. Even if everything is happening all at once and time is an illusion, the fact remains that within each of those moments there are beings for whom there is at least the perception of before and after, of continuity. Illusion or not, time clearly has an effect on our lives, and we have to deal with whatever it is.
And so you can see if God in the universe is the same thing. It's not like just randomly, all-powerful being created, but it's merely physics playing out forever. You can see the divinity of nature itself.
And we are part of nature, therefore we are part of God. I feel like I'm in a spin-off of Stranger in a Strange Land, where people who've joined the Martian religion are saying, "Thou art God" to each other. Incidentally, Stranger in a Strange Land is the book that began solidifying my atheism, started me going from not really giving a shit to realizing just how nutty belief in God actually is. If this is a method for converting atheists, it's kinda going backward.
So that's how you can go, okay, I see that everything has some divinity because it's all part of nature, and as in infinity, things always keep flowing, and so all that energy is all one and the same thing, and that's how you help people get to fifth dimensional consciousness, unity consciousness, Christ consciousness.
I guess I was wrong. He mentions Jesus twice. Problem is, isn't pantheism kind of incompatible with Christianity? Or is this just part of his religions or corrupt philosophy? Not that it really matters. This word salad of his could make just about anybody's eyes gloss over. Anybody sober, at least.
So there are other forms outside of theism and pantheism, like pandeism and panendeism. There's even more things in theology, but I would stick with first just trying to get to pantheism. If you are interested in furthering your awareness of the different formats that God could be considered in, then definitely I highly recommend panendeism.
What this sounds like to me is throwing chunks of shit at a belief wall and hoping something sticks. It doesn't sound like how you convert an atheist. It sounds like how someone who wants a god can go shopping for one that fits, whether they need one or not.
I hope you beautiful beings of light learn something new.
Boom shakalaka laka boom?
For you atheists out there who aren't convinced, I'd be surprised at least that you don't start to at least look into scientific pantheism as a basis, because that is taking away the tyrannical, ridiculous absurdity of so many religions.
Does he seriously think that finding religions distasteful is what's preventing us from believing in them? I mean, okay, maybe there really are some angry at God atheists out there, but for the rest of us, you're not going to make believers out of us by making God seem less like Darth Vader. It doesn't work that way.
Take care, you beautiful beings of light. I love you. Remember, enrich your journey. Spread the love. Namaste.
May the Force be with you. Now, before I go, I know I said I wasn't going to do this anymore, but people keep sending me stuff off of my Amazon wish list with no other way to thank them, and if I don't do it, I feel like an asshole. So, to Princess Frida, thank you for these. I really appreciate it. Until next time, fellow space travelers, this is BionicDance saying don't run on automatic. Instead, please think. Dewey, what the hell are you doing? Get out of the way!
Sandra, this isn't right. There has to be a better way to make money than taking these assassination contracts.
Like what? What do you have in mind?
Well, have you ever considered Patreon?
Patreon? Where people donate money for those videos I'm in? Do you really think that'll pay the bills, Dewey?
Well, if people want to prevent a few international incidents, I'm sure they'll be willing to contribute. After all, what's $1 or $2 per video to forestall the occasional war, right?
Well, I suppose I could give it a try. You'd better be right about this.
Come on, Sandra, let's go home. Sandra!
What? He was right there. I'll start that Patreon thing tomorrow. Promise.
Should have rated unsubscribed. Oh.